first and foremost, what we are doing here, Jack, is this is Golf Buddies Loud, and this is a format of this podcast that I've toyed with. Oh, not toyed with. I've done it a few times now. And for anyone that's listening to this who is unfamiliar with the Golf Buddies Aloud format, if you want to know the origin of the wordplay behind it, I'm not going to repeat that again here now. You're going to have to go back and listen to the episode that's on Substack with the guys from Depeche Golf. But the idea behind Golf Buddies Aloud is I bring a friend like Jack, who I'm very grateful to, on to be alongside me to kind of bounce off, because I really felt like, I'm a year in now to doing GYH. Podcasting, as much as I love it, can actually be a really lonely place when you're up there. Yes, obviously you're in live conversation with a guest, but this for me gives me something different. I'm actually way more relaxed right now than I am in a given guest interview scenario, because I feel like I'm trying to be the host with the most. So the idea is this is a more informal, kind of personal format. I'm really hopeful, and your schedule depending, Jack. It sounds like you're bang up for it. That over the next, for the duration of season 3 at least, anyway, you were going to be doing this every other week, right? So guest episodes will go out one Monday, and then the following Monday it's a Golf Buddies Aloud, and it's going to be out through Substack. And yeah, we chat about golf, life, talk about trends and themes like we already have been seeing in golf at the moment, and our own perspectives on anything really that anchors to health and well-being in golf. So with this being the first time you're on this pod, Jack, do you want to say a brief word of intro? Tell us a bit about you.
Sure. No, thank you for that. And I'm definitely bang up for it. I've enjoyed getting to know you so much, Chris, and the introduction that Mike Harris made for us. I think he knew off the bat, from talking to us at respective different sides of the world, that we were brothers from another mother, I guess, in this sense, because I think we look at golf in the same type of way, which it has this philosophical bent to it, this metaphor for life, this larger thing at play, right? So to introduce myself, golf has been a part of my life. I'm 38 years old. It's been a part of my life for probably 35 years, right? Like my dad still plays. I play with him every Saturday. That's a big part of, what I get out of the game is the relationships and camaraderie that kind of comes with it. But it's been a big part of my life for as long as I can remember. I was a walk-on, which I don't know if the European listeners are familiar with that for university, but basically when you go to college and play, most people get recruited because they're very good in high school, and colleges say, hey, we want you to come play for us. I didn't have that. Nobody wanted me, but I wanted to play, right? So I basically, my first 2 years of college in the summers, I would work, but I would also travel around the local area and play in a bunch of amateur tournaments and kind of say to the coach, hey, I really want to play, and kind of like a try hard, basically, right? Just kind of keep going and keep pushing for it. So I walked on to the team my junior year. I went to Boston College. So I ended up playing Division I college golf against players that were a lot better than me, who had a lot more talent than I did. But I was in the arena, which felt amazing to be a part of that and to experience golf at a different level than I had ever been exposed to before. And I've kind of carried that with me, for the last 16 years since I've graduated. I've never been able to give it up. I worked a corporate job for 2 years when I first graduated school, and I hated it. I was like, I can't believe this is what my life is going to be like for the next 60 years of doing this, right? So I ended up quitting my job after 2 years to start a blog back when blogs were super popular. That was basically covering professional golf, writing about my experiences in golf. It was called The Golf Dog. And my friend, who at that time knew something about website hosting, was like, I'll help you host it. And he subsequently lost all the material. So there's no proof that ever existed, but it was a very fun thing that I did. And I'll tell you one quick funny story about it, where this was before gambling and golf was very popular, right? but I used to like look at the tournaments and say, okay, here are the stats from who's won, this PGA Tour event for the last 5 years. Here's the players who are playing in it this year. Here's my preview of the tournament and who I think is going to win. So for the first two tournaments, right, I'll never forget it. The first one was at Harbour Town, and I picked Graham McDowell because he's so accurate, right? It's such a shot makers type of course. And he was like a 33-1 bet. He won at Harbour Town. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm onto something. Maybe I quit my job for good reason, right? The next week was the Zurich Classic in New Orleans, and I picked Billy Horschel, who was also a 33-1 shot. And he won the second week. And I was like, that's it. Like, I'm fully on board. Turns out that doesn't pay the bills because I did bet on it. So I got back into corporate America. I worked in advertising and marketing in a role that I enjoyed a lot more than my first role. I did that for 12, 13 years. And about a year and a half ago, I decided to quit again and to follow my passion for golf. And I've been working for the last year and a half on building my little company that I call Knudsen, KNDSN, which is named after George Knudsen, who was a Canadian professional golfer in the 60s and 70s. And he's a gentleman that I came across during the pandemic watching old Masters highlights. And I'm sure we can dive into that story at some point. But, his philosophy and what I learned from him was to play your best golf, you have to be yourself. Like his principles is the natural golf swing, the natural golf life. He means that kind of in a physics sense, but also in a spiritual and personality and philosophical sense. So you mentioned that competitive event that I played last year where I played my best. And I kind of applied those principles for the first time in reality. And that really unlocked a different side of my game that I've never experienced before. So my purpose with this company is to help, especially primarily junior golfers and people who haven't, first generation junior golfers who haven't been exposed to the game before, to understand that to be a golfer, you don't have to be a golfer with a capital G. You don't have to wear pleated khakis and a tucked in white polo shirt and belong to a country club and have saddle shoes. Like, that's kind of a stereotype, right? Like, be yourself, express yourself on the golf course, bring everything that's great about you to the course. And that's going to allow you to enjoy the game in the best possible way, because that's what I've personally found as well. So that's my passion. That's what I've been doing. And it's been incredibly rewarding. And today I'm actually quite nervous because I teach a first tee class out here. I just got done with my first 8-week class where there's, kids age 6 to 13 who are in it. We had 6 kids. And I found out last night that we have 15 kids signed up for this session. So we're at capacity. And I don't think I've ever taught or helped with a 15 kid golfer group before. So I have to figure out how to keep their rapt attention for an hour and a half this afternoon. But it's my passion. I love it. And I'm super happy to be here and be involved with you.
Jack, that's awesome. Let's make sure that in one of these future episodes, we do a reflection then on how that goes later today, because I feel you genuinely. Like I did. I can't remember if I told you. I got certified in what's called the CGI program, Community Golf Instructor, during the sabbatical I took last year, and so it's been developed in partnership with all the national governing bodies for golf in the UK, like England Golf, Scotland Golf, Wales Golf, etc., to try and help along very similar lines to what you're describing. And I've yet to actually use that in practice, and I would love to, but there's almost a fear holding me back, just because I'm like, whoa, it's crazy how a bunch of kids can make you feel super nervous, right? Isn't it? But
I've learned as long as you have snacks and treats, that gets you a long way. So I like to bribe them with snacks, treats, and I give them all a sleeve of multicolored golf balls and their first golf glove. And that usually buys me a week or two until I can figure it out. So that's the game plan. Yeah.
Nice. So it's a solid game plan. I don't think you can blow too many holes in that by the sounds of things. But something? Yeah, a word of thanks again, like you say, to Mike Harris. It's been he's very, very good at connecting people, and he's got that intuition. And yeah, I've loved all of our chats before now, and looking forward so much to what's to come with this. But that there's you and I have got way more in common than I realized. Like, not just the so many things, like the Liverpool Football Club thing, the thing about getting picked last on the sports team. I
Mhm.
mean, hello, that was
Yeah.
me back in the day as well. I
Yeah.
mean, God loves a trier, doesn't he? So as
Well,
they
that's
say,
what I keep hoping.
you know. But it's but was there? I know we've talked about the golf dog before, but was there an element of the underdog in there, or
So I would say my two favorite things in the world are golf and dogs. So it's not a
yeah,
very
another thing we
well
share
thought
in
out,
common?
right? Yeah. So, but I think that like I one of my favorite jobs in life was working on a golf course on the maintenance crew. Talk about golf yourself healthy from like a mental health perspective. Doing maintenance on a golf course, waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, getting on a mower at 5 o'clock in the morning, and like just being out in nature and doing all that sort of stuff was kind of the place that I felt the most peace ever. Um, and for all those jobs that I had, there was always a superintendent who was in charge
Mm,
of the course, who was kind of my boss, right? And they would always have a dog with them because it was kind of like the thing. A superintendent has a dog. I think traditionally it's to chase the geese off the course, right? Like
mm,
stuff like that, but
mm.
it's a companion. And I just always loved those dogs. And I thought they were like the happiest creatures on earth because they were outdoors, they were with the people that they wanted to be with, they were doing their job, they felt fulfilled. I guess I'm really putting a lot of thought into the mindset of a dog, but this is how I viewed it. And I just thought that was such a beautiful thing, and they're so enthusiastic and happy and always in a good mood. And I was like, that's kind of how I would like to live my life, like a golf superintendent's dog does on the golf
Mm.
course, happy, seeing people, meeting people, doing a job, doing good work. That feels like a life well lived to me. So that's kind of the derivation of it.
Yeah, I love that. A quick word of love and appreciation to all of our greenkeepers, as we say mostly in the or superintendents out there. There's a good friend of mine, Matt, who I worked with for a time when I was on the board at my local golf club, and we hired him at the time as a course manager. He listens to this podcast, and I learned so much through him in relation to what it takes to be good at greenkeeping. And like you were saying, he talks glowingly, for want of a better word, about that kind of being, he loves his job, being out there in touch with nature and things. But one thing I have learned through him and this wider network of greenkeepers that I've got to know is, unfortunately for them, when they are reporting to golf club managers, boards of golf clubs, like, they get treated like second class citizens a lot of the time. And their working conditions aren't always great, their pay is not always great. So, this is a call to action to our listeners to, next time you see one of your greenkeepers on the course, which you probably won't because they're ninjas and they're really good at trying to hide. That's the thing I learned as well, is they'll try and be discreet. Go over, give them some love, tell them how much you appreciate them, because you wouldn't have a golf course if it wasn't for them, basically. So,
Amen. 100%.
so want to chew the fat on maybe not chew the fat, because, like, fat's not good. And this is called Golf Yourself Healthy, this podcast. So let's just sort of noodle a bit in the episode that we had with Professor Andrew Murray. What did you take away from that, Jack?
I think the biggest takeaway was the intentionality behind the work that he does. And just like you're talking about with the superintendents or the greenskeepers and how you may not notice what they're doing all the time, people take it for granted. I think his work and what he's doing is so incredibly valuable, and people don't probably think about it as much. And when he was talking about like the path, like you may not be able to shoot what Rory shoots at Royal County Down or whatever example he used, but you can walk the course and you can get the same level of exercise and stuff like that, right? So I think that's such an underappreciated part of the game is how healthy that it can make you, right? Like, and my opinion is I try and walk every single time that I play, and I've gotten into arguments with golf course operators who say you can't walk. I'm like, please, so I think it adds such a element to the game of how it was meant to be played originally, where you're kind of out in nature, and people say a good walk spoiled, right? And I thought that was such an interesting part of it, where it was like traditionally, golf organizations have shied away from talking about the health benefits of it because it was considered a good walk spoiled, right? I thought that was so compelling and so interesting because it's like, I mean, I always feel like even if I play terribly, right, at least my whoop says I got some exercise today, right? At least I did something. I was out in nature. I feel better. If it's a Saturday, I was playing with my dad. I met some new people. So really, whatever the score is on the card is secondary to all the benefits that I got from the experience of that day. And I think the work that he's doing serves to highlight that, promote that, and make sure more and more people understand that message and are able to take that out of the game as well. My kind of larger takeaway from the whole thing was I mentioned this to you in one of our previous conversations was when I was watching I think it was the US Open tennis last year on the court, they had a sign, kind of a stencil on the court that said world's healthiest sport. Because if you think about it, if you're playing tennis, you're moving back and forth. It's very athletic, right? I'm sure you're burning a lot of calories. It's whatever. I think golf has a claim to that as well, especially if you're walking, right? But in particular, I think, could be one of the most mentally healthy sports, which is very ironic considering how frustrated and stressed people can get out there. But just focus group of one, my own personal experience, again, being out in nature, walking, enjoying the trees, the flowers, the animals, whatever it is, right? Like, how often do you get a chance to pause in life and to be in that moment and feel that? And that's what I get every single time that I play golf. So I think that's a
Yeah.
huge, huge underreported benefit of the game.
I, I really love that point, and I'm glad you raise it because, you know, as I told you before, one question in particular that I was really relishing asking Andrew was that one around why is it that the golf industry at large is not being more explicit about marketing the health and well-being benefits? Because if you look at the work that he's doing, you look at the work like the research that the R&A have put out. I mean, it's scientifically proven that golf is good for you, and so I felt like the response that he gave was measured. It was really fair. There was you could hear there was like a long pause before he answered it, and I felt like when I asked it, I was like, "Ooh, have I put him on the spot here?" And he's, obviously the last thing someone like him is going to come on and do is kind of point fingers or anything. So we got nothing but a really measured and nonetheless very insightful answer from Andrew. But if I pick up the mantle here and sort of offer my own opinion and maybe reflection and experience on this, is I have this theory, Jack, that so two things I want to get across here. So one, first of all, is when you talk about the mental health benefit of golf, you're speaking my language there, absolutely. And one thing I didn't really get into much with Andrew that I maybe forgot to ask him, but I will hopefully have the chance to ask him, because one of the amazing takeaways from that episode was he's invited me, as you know, to speak at the third International Congress on Golf and Health at the end of March. I can't quite believe I'm even saying that sentence. So that's going to be awesome. But I wanted to ask him about how my interpretation of a lot of the research that the R&A have put out within this frame of health and well-being maybe I'd have to go back and look at it. Maybe this is unfair, but I couldn't help but get this feeling that it was majoring a lot on that physical health thing, and in particular as it related to a certain demographic. So, like when what I mean here is if you look at what health is and you break that down through, like the World Health Organization will break down health in the three categories, like social well-being, mental well-being, and physical well-being. Okay, so the physical piece is the part that normally gets attributed to an older generation. And there's clearly a lot of work being done around, and Andrew and I reference people on that podcast. Like there's a guy over here I've interviewed in the UK on this podcast, Anthony Blackburn. He's got this golf, it's called Golf in Society. He goes in and he uses golf clubs as like health hubs, as he likes to call it. So he gives respite to unpaid carers that are often husbands or wives of elderly people living with dementia or chronic illnesses, and he introduces them to golf. And so that's where that demographic is where I see the physical health stuff. But it leads me into this thing about mental health is, if you look at all the stats around men's mental health, say for instance, a lot of men obviously enjoy golf, as we know. And it leads me to my second point around, I just feel like, and my theory is, part of the reason why golf club owners, managers, anyone that's involved in the running of golf clubs or golf business are at this point in time part of a generation who have tended not to talk about that stuff in the past. So to expect them to be marketing something through a lens which they don't have, if you get what I mean, is a bit of a stretch. So it's not a criticism. It's almost just saying, I'm hopeful that if we're still doing this podcast 10 years from now, the old guard will have passed through. And then there's, like, I do, in fairness, and Andrew says this as well, see the tide is turning, things are changing, it will come in time. But I just think for now, there are still a lot of unrealized potential and opportunity to market health and well-being more in the business side of golf, because Andrew is a academic and a healthcare professional, first and foremost. So welcome your take on that.
So I'm hopeful that more courses and more people and more institutions take up the banner of talking about that. And but before I wrap up, I do want to give a shout out to the R&A, because I have read a few things that they have done. They recently came out with a report about golf for smaller spaces, where they talked about how you can develop land and property that may not be big enough for a golf course and turn it into a community place. I think it's called Golf It in Edinburgh, was where they took a lot
Glasgow,
of the
yeah.
Glasgow, I'm sorry, from the Open Championship. I don't want to get in trouble with your Scottish listeners by mixing those.
Yeah, careful now, careful.
So please
They
keep me
won't
in
take kindly to that. Yeah, that's okay. I'll keep
check.
you honest, dude. I've got you. It's all right.
Thank
You're
you.
one of us.
So but they do such great work on understanding the roots of the game, the other side of the game that people don't think about, right? So the fact that they've done this work on how it makes you feel better on the golf course, the physical benefits of it, the mental benefits of it, all this different stuff, I think they're kind of the leaders in the clubhouse, pun intended, on kind of understanding the larger impact that golf can have. And one of my main takeaways from that podcast that you had was saying, I think it was something, I'm going to mess up the stats, but people are 20%, 30%, 40% more likely to be happy with their social life if they're golfers than if they're not, right? It was like 40 to 60 or 60 to 80%. I forget what the exact one was. But think about that, right? That's because you're in a group, you're meeting people, you're saying what's up to people after the round, you're seeing people beforehand. I mean, that's a huge, huge, huge number. That is part of golf that most people don't think about all the time, that I'm glad that they're reporting on. I'm glad you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. there's such a good point on the R&A, and absolutely props to them. And I think you make me think about how, again, I often refer back to that spell I had on the board at the my local golf club, because I mean, again, that just gave me so much insight and food for thought that I'm now taking into this podcast. And one at that time I had a lot of interaction with the club development officer who works at Wales Golf. Lovely guy, won't mention by name. I don't want to call him out. That's probably not the right thing to do. But he listens to this as well, and he's promised we're going to get the clubs in hand and get a round in sometime this year. But we would often talk about, and I would witness it myself, whether it's the R&A or it's Wales Golf or it's England Golf or whoever. What I observe is a lot of golf clubs take this attitude and approach, which is that the governing body is going to sort it for them and do it for them. And it's like, well, no, like the governing body rightly, in my view, takes the view that, no, hang on a minute, we're the custodians of the game, we govern the game, but that doesn't mean that we do it for you as well. So we're giving you the resources and the education and the support to then localize it and actually deliver it on the ground at your golf club. And I think, I just, although I'm saying that, and that's my theory around why that health and well-being stuff isn't being embraced as much as it can be. In fairness, I am seeing examples out there of, really progressive golf clubs who are just kind of pushing the envelope a bit in a good way, and they're, but I like what you say as well, Jack, about how, especially in the context of men, okay, you have to, I know, again, from professional and first-hand personal experience, that you have to be careful, for want of a better word, around how you frame the narrative around some of this stuff, because naturally men are, and anecdotally I've found, and I've had guests on this podcast who talk about this as well, which is like, if you try and force well-being content on men who aren't naturally inclined to go to therapy or believe in sort of therapeutic care or those sorts of interventions, they're going to run a mile. So like, you got to be careful with, like, if you all of a sudden start, if you're a golf club, which is, say, like a very traditional country club or whatever it is, all of a sudden tomorrow goes woke in the view of certain people, they'll be like, that's it, I'm out of here. That's my subs gone. I'm out. I'm becoming a member somewhere else, kind of thing. So it's a balancing act, and I get that. I mean, you're smiling and nodding, so I'm guessing you know where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I think there's a big, I mean, especially in the States right now, a big cultural conversation around wokeness, or if, I don't know what probably a better word might be to use for that. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, it has to be careful, right? Like, you do want to extol the benefits and have people understand and be comfortable having that conversation. But I'm also not trying to thrust my own personal experience onto everybody else. There's plenty of people who enjoy golf, not because it helps them with depression and anxiety or whatever, right? They just enjoy being out there. So I think it's, you have to it's nice to find a community where people can express that amongst each other and have that be one of the benefits of it in terms of what it can do for you from a health perspective. But being mindful that that's not everybody's experience, and you don't have to shove it down their throat. Basically, I think that's well said by you.
So anyway, we have been going a while, and I just, couple of final things I wanted to get into today. I mean, Jack, I feel like we could go on for hours, but we've got plenty of hours of content in up here, and it'll come all in good time. So, it's your honor. I told you about this earlier. I love a segment. I hope my listeners love a segment. We've become known for it at GYH now. We used to call this the honourable mention, but I just feel that wasn't explicit golf wordplay enough. So we're going with It's Your Honour. And the idea behind this is, again, we give a shout out to people doing really honourable things in golf. And the one I wanted to call out today is a guy called Phil Taylor, who was just awarded the Toby Sunderland Award by the PGA very recently in the last few weeks. The Toby Sunderland Award, from my research, is a long-standing award that is given to PGA professionals who are doing very honourable charitable work, in particular in their communities. And in Phil's case, he has for about 15 years now been involved in various charitable initiatives. One in particular is an initiative called Battle Back Golf. So they are an organization who support military veterans, basically, to, again, use golf for health and well-being benefits. And he's been involved in that for a long time. What I especially loved about his story was that he runs an annual CT trophy, which is an event that he inaugurated in his late brother's memory. His brother's name was Chris Taylor, CT, hence the CT trophy. And I personally love that because, again, if I think about I'm doing this partly because of my son Innes, the very fact that the PGA have an award like that says so much, and I'm all for it. And encourage you listeners to. I'll include the link. Check it out, and just go back. If you want a feel good story and a collection of them, because it also goes on to list out various other kind of runners up or commended people from the different regions of the UK who are raising like tens of thousands of pounds, dollars, whatever, for various charities. So that was really cool.
Shout out to Phil and Battleback Golf. That's amazing. I think the PTSD, I would imagine, right, and stuff like that a lot of veterans and even non-veterans, I guess, deal with. But another part of golf that brings people together, community, helps with that sort of stuff. It's such a wonderful environment and game to be able to not solve any of these issues necessarily, but to provide relief in some form and an outlet in some form. So the people who take up that mantle and use their expertise in that area and in the game to help express that, I think very worthy winner of, I guess, the inaugural Your Honor.
Absolutely, indeed. So, there's another award for you, Phil. Right? So you're just throwing the awards at you at the moment. So
first on the tee. Very
good. Yeah. Oh, that was good. First on the tee. Yeah. We'll see if we can make a segment. Solid. All right. What else have I got on my little cheat sheet or list here? Do you know what? Something that I think we're going to need to trademark, Jack. Another segment. We're not going to cover it today. We're going to do it on the next one to give you time to go away and think about this. Healthy habits. GYH, healthy habits. The possibilities are endless with this. There are so many healthy habits that we can get into to help us play our best golf, to get the most out of golf. We've got an episode coming up in season 3 with a lady called Dr. Rashmi Nirmal. She is based in Canada. She's got a neuroscience and neurodevelopment background. Professionally, academically, works with children, especially with sort of neurodiverse conditions like autism, for instance. But she's applying a lot of her work now with, let's say, aspiring elite college athletes and, and to be fair, any aspiring golfer. And one thing her and I talked about, not so much tied to that, but was on having the right hydration and nutrition in your bag, or golf bag organization, cleanliness, not having Snickers wrappers in there or whatever, sort of like.
God, I feel so seen right now. my golf, I have a Sunday carry bag, right? And I don't know if it's a hole in the pocket or hole in the design, whatever. But like anytime I put something in there, it gets into this little crevasse back there. And every time I go look, I'm out of balls and I got to re-tee and I go peel in there, I always feel that crinkle of that wrapper. And I know it's a Snickers bar or something in there. So I will be paying special attention to that podcast and the healthy habits to up my game in that area, because it's probably not in the best shape it could be right now.
Well, but to the point you just made, it's important that Jack and I say here is that we are not the arbiters or the gods as it relates to like healthy habits, because Jack's clearly just told you, we both just told you, we eat Snickers out in the golf course, right? So, like, what I'm saying is, for you listeners out there, get in touch. Tell us how to be healthy. Like, what are your healthy habits? What are the things that you do that are just, healthy habits that help you in golf and in life? So, we'll bring that up next time. I also feel next time, or another next time, whenever we get to it, we need to talk about 2K25.
Mm-hmm.
Are you an Xbox or a PlayStation guy?
Gosh, I currently don't have a console. I was Xbox guy, I guess, growing up, and then I got a PS5 a couple years ago. I ended up giving it away to somebody because I was trying to move away from being my old role was I worked in video games and I played a lot of FIFA. So I can tell you a lot about like random Serie A strikers from 2018. So I have to like move on from that to kind of focus on my career, but definitely want to pick up the sticks, as we say out here, for 2K25. I think it's, gaming is interesting because it's another outlet for community as well. I think it's what you and I can do a Twitch stream and talk to each other. And, even though we're on other sides of the world, be playing the same course, right? In this kind of virtual platform and doing that sort of stuff. So, it's a pretty easy sell putting Tiger on the cover and saying the GOAT's back in the game. I grew up playing all the Tiger Woods games and some of my fondest memories. So I'll probably be getting back on board for sure.
Well, here's a question. Why are they not calling it Tiger Woods Golf anymore?
Well, that was an EA property, right? I think this is under the 2K umbrella, so there may be some licensing things there.
That'll be it.
But, I'll just say this. They had a game for any of your avid video game listeners that was called The Golf Club, I think it was called. That was the progenitor of the 2K series that they had. So before it was officially licensed as PGA 2K, I think it was called the Golf Club. I may be mistaking that. But they had this thing on there where individuals could custom create golf courses, right? And so basically any course under the sun that you've heard of was in the game, which is very, very challenging to get the licensing, but they would call it different stuff. So like Augusta was in the game, but they would call it Magnolia Country Club or something like that, right? And there was a person who they used this technology called LiDAR, where they could basically take a golf course anywhere, use the LiDAR technology and replicate it exactly, mimic it and put it on the golf course. So I ended up probably one of the most fun rabbit holes that I went down as a golf gamer was I made myself a 52-week PGA Tour schedule in that game that played like Cypress Point, Pine Valley, obviously Augusta, like all these amazing golf courses were on there. And it was some of the most fun that I've ever had. And I've heard that they have the Create a Course feature on this game as well. I'm sure they've closed that loophole from a licensing perspective for some of these other courses, but just another way that you can enjoy the game and have a lot of fun with it.
That sounds like Flight Sim for golf course architects.
Yeah, I haven't done any flight sim stuff, but it was one of the coolest things that I've ever. I was like, I cannot believe this thing exists, and it was just this whole online community where you're like, wait, what's Augusta called in the game again? You had to type it all weird. There was like asterisks in it, so it wasn't the mods didn't take it down and delete the course, but it was so well replicated, it was unbelievable. There's such talented people out there who are able to put all that together.
They do that in Call of Duty and stuff as well, don't they? It's almost like creating maps, right?
It's basically creating essentially Yeah.
if I'm hearing you right, oh, that's whoa, jeez.
Yeah.
Is this my appetite wasn't whetted already?
Yeah.
I'll leave you with this thought, and this blew my mind the other day, and maybe that's because I've only just arrived in the 21st century, and this has actually been happening for a while. But I noticed on my so I have an Amazon Fire Stick wired into my TV set. You don't even need a physical Xbox console these days. You can play Xbox through your Fire Stick.
Yeah. I had no concept of that whatsoever. So I don't think you're behind the times. That seems
Uh,
like a hack that I've never heard of before. So
I mean,
I'm
that is some kind of witchcraft
yeah.
sorcery right there, but that's
What do you do?
incredible.
You just get the controller and have the Fire Stick, and it's all loaded up. Wow. Okay.
That's it. That's it.
Times are changing, Chris. We got to catch up and be a part of it, right?
Well, they are. Nice Bob Dylan reference in there, and we'll talk about that at some point as well. But anyway, until the next time, always remember to embrace the rough and cherish the fairway. Thanks, Jack.
Cheers. Thanks, Chris.